Okay, good evening, YouTube. I'm just gonna kill some time here. We'll see who joins in. Um, we're gonna do the usual rant, whatever. Um, but gives us a minute to warm up because it takes time when you're unannounced and uninvited. So we'll see who gets invited, who we invite ourselves into. We're coming at you from the Great Mills Park in the big metropolis of Carson City. I was wondering who it was named after because I've always it's one of those things you always think it's probably named after Mills Lane, but it's not. And I looked at the plaque and it doesn't even say what it's named after. It just says it's called Mills Park. And I'm wondering if maybe it was a mill, like there used to be a mill here, and that's why they call it Mills Park. Like there used to be wood mills, or I guess it could have been a mills processing, like for silver or gold back in the day, but I don't think so. It's too far away from some of the prime mining operations back in the day. But it was dedicated in 1983, and that's kind of before Mills Lane's time. So I don't think that's what it's named after, but it doesn't say what it's named after. It just said its name's Mills Park. So, hey, here we are. Um, so hope everybody's having a good week. It's the notorious day known as Hump Day, um, such as it is. And yeah, it's just the evening. We're getting it through. Keep an eye on the radar, right? The other day, we were talking about. I guess that was Was that Monday or yesterday? Was that yesterday morning? I guess that was yesterday morning. We're just talking about doing all the things, right? Don't get focused on the things that don't affect you or the things that you can't really impact. Um, and Steve did a really good video um, about. Daggum, I'm losing my train of thought. He just did a short, and I'm trying to refer to the video before that, and I can't remember what the title. Daggum it. Well, he did his live chat Monday. Um, but he just did a short about doing all the things. Maybe that's what I'm thinking about. I'm just blending the two together. Anyway, Steve just did a short about doing all the things, which was on topic, on cue, right? Having medical training, gardening, and all the things, right? So Steve just did that over at Corsair Trainers. So putting out the good word, not to be sidetracked by the things that, especially if you are in a beginning preparedness phase, right? If you know that you are behind the power curve on things, um, don't focus on one thing, no matter what it is. Like, well, I guess if you know you're going to starve, like you need to focus on one thing. But there's not many times if you're in a prepared mindset that you need to just focus on one thing. It needs to be the range of things, all the things, right? Um, so that's good. And then Alicia did her video. Hey, Alicia, what's up? Um, Popping in here. Um, did her video today, and you took me off. You asked two different questions, but the question at the end is the one I tried to answer, um, because you were talking about if the draft takes all the able-bodied men out of the country and there's all these immigrants in the country. So let's talk about that real quick since you're here. Hopefully you're still here. Hopefully you didn't come in, hit like, and disappear on us. Hey, Nickel Stacking, what's up? Welcome. I'm not going to try to beat up on you too bad, Nickel. I know you're just conversing. I'm not. I'll get to your subject too. Um, they're kind of tied together, but they don't necessarily. But Alicia asked the questions like she's most concerned about World War III and the draft. And we talked about this back when Ukraine and Russia first kicked off. Um, Full scale nukes aren't on the table, I don't think. Tactical nukes are on the table as a possibility. That and some sort of exchange, I think everybody is anticipating. Um, the big concern there is how does one world government come out of that? How does that lead to the control of one central authority figure, right? Because that's how you're going to get peace, right? The only way you're going to get peace with all these people with nukes is if one supposed peacemaker comes in and brings everything under one rule, right? And everybody be happy about it. Um, just know it's coming. Maybe not in our lifetimes, but that's what the book says. That's what's coming. So always be frosty on that take, and don't be deceived by those who promise the unattainable um, when there's only one peacemaker. But Alicia asked was concerned about World War III and the draft taking all the able-bodied men out of the country, with immigrants being left, these illegal immigrants in particular, being left in the country to run amok and do whatever. Um, First, I think the draft would cause a legit insurgency. And it's not just because of my opinion. Um, if there's a draft, there are too many of people like me who will not allow their kids to be drafted. Um, and a large portion of those people are prior military veterans or retired types who will not allow that to happen because they see how um, corrupt the whole thing, the whole MIC, the whole undermining of the military, the lack of leadership in the military, just the complete disaster. If they tried to implement a draft, there would be severe problems here at home. So the able-bodied men maybe not completely removed from the country like Alicia was concerned about, but a good portion could be. The people that are coerced one way or the other because of either economic conditions, it's the best option for them, so they see, why not? The brainwashed ones who think that this administration are supposedly the good guys, and that fighting for uh, the supposed Ukrainian people is the right thing, or however it ends up the draft comes around. Oh, we're saving Europe again. However they voice this and however it gets played out, like people will get sucked into that, right? The propaganda. However that happens, we'll take in a portion of able-bodied people who think they're doing the right thing. So that's going to be on the table. But there is a huge undercurrent of the quote unquote warrior class that will not go along with it. um, so I don't think that. Yeah, there. How about a secret draft, right, Nickel? It won't be called a draft. They will do something else to get their military people to get the war they want, right? Um, if that's the case, I don't how that's going to play. I don't, because I think it's just more the rumor of wars and the threat of this annihilation and everything. It's meant to just put people in a fear state. I don't think there's going to be a legit knockdown, drag out World War III. I don't think that's on the table. I don't think that's going to happen, but it could. I mean, it's certainly out there. We've been talking about it for 2 years now, over more than that. And where are we at? We're not really any closer necessarily, but there's a lot of fear mongering over it. There's a lot of fear based on it. So, what's the ultimate end of that? What's the ultimate end of all this fear mongering? People are distracted from the economy. People are distracted from, some of the economic conditions and their upward mobility and the robbery that's going on daily. um, so that's my ultimate thing about why a lot of this propaganda is getting put out, is keep people distracted, in my opinion. Because we certainly don't have the military leadership capable of winning it. I don't think so. I mean, we got a technological advantage or we had, I don't know if we do anymore, but we had a technological advantage, but we have really overplayed that hand and allowed ourselves to be kind of outpaced. But at a certain point, I think they want to take the human element out of it, and that's where the drones and everything come in, mechanized. So that's a few years down the road. That's not in the intermediate, near term possibility of, fully mechanized, almost complete robot armies. That's not really that soon. We're not that close to that. Um, but go back to Alicia's question. If the draft is implemented, I think there'll be big problems here at home. But with the illegals will be adopted. For lack of a better way to describe it, they would be the brown shirts. they're going to be formed into a brown shirt unit of some sort because we've talked about this for a long time. They want to get somebody in some sort of, we've called it the military. It might not be a militarized force, but it'll be a Homeland Security type of organization, whatever you want to call it. They'll be the brown shirts. Those are the people that will fire on Americans. Those are the people who will uh, kill Americans for any random reason. For one, they have no incentive not to. They have no tie to the people or the land. And from where they come from, that's kind of a normal thing, right? That's a normal thing for the police or the militarized police, military to oppress the citizenry. They'd eat it up. I think that's what the illegals are primarily here for. They're going to be formed into a force and encouraged to join that such a force to do that because they're more capable physically and mentally than your average left-wing loony, right? Of doing anything like that. The useful idiots of the communists aren't capable of doing a lot of the things, even though they might talk a good game. They're not really capable of that, in my mind. So I see where you're coming from, Alicia, is being concerned that we would be void of whatever able-bodied males there are, but I think they would be they wouldn't be going on in no draft, and they would be left to fend for themselves here against the overbearing centralized government brown shirt army that would be created. To answer that, to talk about that. Now, to get to Nichols' point, this is kind of more about the clickbait title. This is the clickbait title that comes, and this has been an ongoing discussion for 8 years plus. Hey, Guns Coast to Coast, what's up? Clickbait title. There you go. That's why we're here. Better part of 8 years we've been talking about civil war on here, about the possibility, and probably longer than that. I've been talking about secession ever since I started this channel. Secession is the only peaceful means that this country can function moving forward. The violence perpetrated by the central government proves that to be correct, because that's all they have is perpetuating violence and control over the states and the people moving forward, and threats of violence. That's the only thing they have going for them. So secession, as I've long preached, is the only peaceful option. But nobody's ready for it. Nobody wants it that is in any form of position of control, except for a small portion of outspoken voices, right? Your states are bought out by the feds. Every government program is bought out by the feds. The Federal Reserve Bank, not just the feds, backed by the Federal Reserve, right? Federal Reserve uses the government as their front man. So nobody is going to get that far in that movement, I don't think, to make it happen in any sort of. So that leads to the Civil War question, and it just pops up. We were in election year, so we got to talk about it, right? It seems like this came around in 16, 18, 20. It's like every 2 years, whenever there's a big change in Congress, everybody thinks they could talk about it, and it's gonna happen, or this is how it's gonna happen, or however. Riots in the streets and low level protest violence is not even close to Civil War level starting events. Not even close. I did the video. It was probably 7 years ago or so, about Civil War the way it should be, and the way it should be is the states seceding and leaving DC behind and letting it just implode. Like DC should be salted and that's it. It's done. Everybody should just ignore it and leave it alone. However the states want to do, some reorganization and 5 different republics or whatever, so be it. Or the Socialist Republic on the West Coast and the Northeast, however that breaks out, right? That's the way it should go. But we know that the people who want to control people aren't going to let that happen. Because the ultimate end all be all is one world central control. So they use this Civil War pariah. Is it no pariah is the wrong word? Red herring is the Civil War thing a red herring now at this point, to where it's like they floated out there to kind of distract people, and hey, you better get in line or there's going to be a civil war, and you better come back together and be kumbaya, or else there's going to be a civil war. Like, who's really benefiting from this propaganda of this title and this movie? Now there's this movie out there that some people, as far as entertainment, say it's entertaining, and it brings up certain points, and other people are like it's garbage. Like, what do you believe? It's entertaining, apparently. I guess we'll take it for that. It's a good distraction. Is it just as good a distraction as all this other talk about Civil War? Um, but YouTube is just promoting this thing a lot lately. Um, I've seen lots of titles, lots of talk about it. Um, and this goes back to like when YouTube starts to allow certain things to be talked about, you got to get worried because it's behind another agenda. And I would just wonder, like, who's going to benefit from that discussion, and is it DC? Ultimately, it seems like everything leads to further control by DC, because everybody wants to get in line and nobody wants to step out of line, and nobody wants to do what's right. They just want to be kumbaya with evil people and call it good. Um, because the other option is so bad. Mutilating kids and sending billions of fake money, billions of dollars in fake money to other countries so they can benefit, while Americans are steadily losing their way of life and their living conditions through inflation, even though people seem to refuse to believe it. What's worse? Is it any worse than that Civil War outcome? But there's no real clear, true leaders in the Civil War scenario. There's not enough. The battle lines aren't drawn. There's a lot that has to happen before we even get close. There's not organized resistance in any shape or form. So really, it gets to that low level. We have to go through a bleeding Kansas first. If you're familiar with 1858 and 1859 and those times in Kansas and some of the border states prior to the last time this went down, you have to get that type of event first to get people mobilized and fired up. Protests in the streets, this light duty, it's not even Boston Massacre level stuff. Boston Massacre was more of a galvanizing event than any of these supposed, from your Rodney King's a bad example. That was so long ago, different situation. Like, but your more recent, what was the guy's name? I can't remember the guy's name. The Minneapolis thing. But when Minneapolis went down, like, that still wasn't even enough of a galvanizing event for the other side to get, because the other side, as much as you may think that it's a Civil War type of event, they want centralized control. They want more federal power over everything, so that everybody's the same, everybody is equal and fair, and everything just goes along to get along. So that, in that respect, they're the useful idiots working for that cause. Because they're encouraging federalized police. That's what they're really up and leading to. As much as they might talk about defund this and defund that, they really just want centralized control over all of it. Oh, St. Floyd, there you go. Yeah, St. Floyd, the George Floyd infamous riot. Yeah, that kind of like kicked off that whole summer of love. But those are just useful idiots for encouraging centralized control of everything. Hey, what's up? Speaking of Steve's checked in, Corsair Trainers. I was just commenting on your do all the things short you put out, and it is what it is. That you should be focused on doing all the things for sure. So it's just timing and propaganda distraction to me. All this Civil War talk coming out little bit by little bit, just trying to get people to go to the worst place in their mind so they can bring them all the way back to Kumbaya come November 7th or whatever day it is. Is it November 5th this year? Whatever day the election is year. So that the day after, everybody's Kumbaya, we're going to get along because we don't want to dissolve this monster that's been stealing our wealth since 1913. We don't want to dissolve this thing that's been just overbearing and stealing our freedoms, for that long. We want to go along to get along and continue that robbery while we, try to figure everything else out and know that we have no control. um, so there you go with that. That's it's just I don't have any answers for the Civil War thing because I think it's all distraction. I don't think we're leading in that direction. I don't think we're close to that. It's going to take a lot of other politically charged events that to get that going, and that's going to it could happen. It can happen quickly. There's no doubt. It could happen almost overnight. Like George Floyd ramped up some stuff pretty quick, but it wasn't enough to like we're talking about with this split of the populace. Like it gets people upset at each other, but when you get to bleeding Kansas level and people willing to fight over land uh, and territory for a cause, like that's what you really got to get to. And most most people aren't even close to being that. As much as all you read these surveys, like 30% think it's coming, or 29% think it's inevitable, and 30% think it's possible. Whatever the numbers are, like they're not even really understanding what they're really talking about. They're not. They're thinking if you have any little protest and there's any disagreement between people, that's civil war. Whatever their frame of mind is, people aren't really putting it in context what that really means to have a civil war. Um, we got to go through a lot of low-level insurgency stuff before it gets to that point, and that's where the illegal immigrant brown shirt army comes into play. I think is when the real low-level insurgency comes that the government knows they can't stop. Um, that's when the brown shirts will get rolled out and really start cracking heads on people that they're just glad to be here. So the government gives them a job to do, and they go out and do it. Be ready, stay frosty. And it won't be in places, it'll be anytime you can get somebody out of the environment. So where you think all the illegals are, they're going to use them elsewhere where they're not from. And that's going to be the real key, because everybody thinks like border town Texas, South California, even Southern Nevada, like all these places where you think they're real hubs of those populaces, like they're going to get moved out of there to really crack heads somewhere else, like rural Kansas, or like Appalachia, Appalachistan, or whatever. It's going to be interesting, however it plays out, because I just don't see this being long. Yeah, I like, Nickel, that one video you shared, the 12 ways the USA could fall or something like that. I mean, there's many ways. I mean, the economic side alone, the debt, China could undermine our country really quick, but they don't really want to. They just want to use it as a threat, I think, and ultimately go along to get along, just as long as they get their way in certain areas. What we got here in the chat? Yeah, we're split in about 20 different ways, Nickel. People just don't think of it that way. People think that too much red and blue, and this country's not even close to red and blue. Northern California is nothing like Appalachia. Texas is divided like 4 different ways. Texas alone can't even get along if they ultimately came down to it. If there was some serious angst going on. We've talked about it before, like there's like 12 different little nations you could make us into, where people, there's too many regional, political, religious differences, economic differences to keep any large group together, I think. And everybody thinks it's just a red versus blue problem. It's far beyond that. which causes part of the problem because people can't coalesce around one idea because there is no unifying idea with that just separate groups of people. So once people come to the realization that, like, oh, we're not even in agreement with our neighbors, you got like Eastern Washington. Not only do they not get along with Western Washington, they really don't get along with Montana either. Maybe a little bit with Idaho, not really in certain parts of Idaho. Like, there's so many. That's why you get that whole idea of the state of liberty with Eastern Washington, like, you know, in the state of Jefferson. But now you got the whole greater Idaho because people realize there's this ebb and flow of, well, the state of Jefferson is a certain group and economic independence group, but then you have the political leanings of the greater Idaho movement, and it's like those are in conflict because the greater Idaho template drastically overlaps the state of Jefferson, which is kind of interesting how that greater Idaho thing kind of gained a little bit of steam recently when the state of Jefferson's been around for 60 years, more than 60 years. Um, you know, but just hasn't been able to pull the trigger on that. So that's that. Yeah, Hawaii should. Why couldn't Hawaii be? Hawaii really is a vulnerable place, though, because militarily, several places could snatch it up if they wanted to. I don't know that Hawaii can necessarily mount their own defense, so they need somebody to help them out if they want to remain independent. But hope everybody's doing good. Kind of wanted to throw that out there. That's the clickbait title to throw out there. The Civil War is kind of the clickbait of today, of the last couple months, it seems like, and it probably will be for the next 5 months. And everybody worried about the summer of love coming up. Everybody just waiting for something to get caught on a cell phone. Everybody's just waiting for another incident to be caught. These college things are trying to instigate it. They're trying to get something to get people riled up about by some, special category person or people getting oppressed by somebody or assaulted by somebody to kind of just try to spin things out of control and out of context, right? And trying to push people into one camp or the other. Again, I'd say more so to control them tend to actually lead to any split because they want centralized control. And the best way to control the group is to keep them fighting amongst themselves. Take for example, prime example today in the House of Representatives, the House Speaker was being voted. There was a vote to oust the House Speaker and replace him, and Team Blue came to the aid of Team Rhino Red and saved the guy. As a prime example of how the central controllers work things, because they want you to fight amongst each other at a certain point, but then they got to keep their guy in there to keep everything going as per, we got to keep the money going to these places. We got to keep the debt rolling. We can't have any upset in the banker's plan. Because that's really all the people who are benefiting is the bankers, right? Is it not? So there's a prime example of the system just supporting itself and continuing itself. But to segue, I guess it's going to be a rough segue because this is completely off subject and more to do with the picture thumbnail than to do with the topic of the title. So glass. And you just look at everything that's been put in plastic containers over the decades, right? I mean, most of us, if you're of any such an age, remember Coke, Pepsi, all in glass bottles, right? And then all of a sudden, early 80s, you had the crying Indian and, the recycling, and all of a sudden glass bottles went away and everything became plastic, right? And it's kind of interesting how that happened. And then I got to thinking about what is really a sustainable something that can be happen at a local level and be done. Is glass not something that's been historically it's been around a lot longer. Glass is recyclable. Glass is, but you're able to manufacture glass, if I'm not mistaken, a lot easier than plastic in a plastic area, right? So it makes you wonder, like, why is nothing in glass anymore? Are beer bottles pretty much, I mean, you got all this, Mexican sodas all come in glass bottles. Why does nothing in America come in glass bottles? Practically, you got beer, and that's almost, it seems like, about it. You'll get some like certain things that are acidic, like tomato paste and spaghetti sauce, will come in glass containers. I've noticed, especially the good stuff. Um, but they really push hard to get anything else in plastic, um, or plastic lined cans is the other big one. Um, but we all know plastic is bad. Plastic is, and you hear these stories about how most things are that you think are going to recycling aren't going to recycling. They still end up in landfill. Um, and I just wonder how, like, legit, being able to make your own glass bottles is a prepping skill, is a future prep to be able to make your own glass, so that you can, or recycle your own glass from broken containers, because things break, and just having that as a community effort, uh, because you want to have containers, you won't be able to seal containers, you want something that's durable and can last. But how, I mean, where's the last place you saw making glass? You know, um, wow, because all the chemicals that go in plastic and everything, like leaching plastic and everything, nobody wants that, to deal with that. But here we are, stuck using plastic for everything. To a certain extent, it's reusable, but I wish I had a way to make glass. I was just thinking about that, I don't know, last week sometime, about how being able to recycle glass or make your own glass would be a legit prep, a legit industry if you could get into it. I don't know what it takes. It can't. I mean, it does take time and effort, and a certain amount of industry to do it. But I mean, glass making's been around for how many centuries? You know, and now that we know all the other techniques to make it, stronger, more durable, and not as fragile, like, and advanced it, you apply that, and boom. Was it the lead in glass that made everybody all scared of, was the lead? Is that what scared us away from glass? Or was it the recycling effort that everybody's like, well, it's easier to recycle plastic? Was it the broken glass? Like, remember as a kid, you always were, you go to the park like this, got to have your shoes on because there could be broken glass or whatever. And broken glass was never fun, but broken glass wasn't destroying the environment and, causing fish to have three eyeballs either, or was it? I don't know. Hey, Practical Rifle, what's up? Great note. Dark there, huh? Yeah. We got about another, almost an hour. We might have an hour of daylight left. But man, yeah, if anybody knows anything about glass making bottles, and making your own mason jars, basically, like a worthy endeavor. Maybe encourage somebody or fund that effort in your local area if you have the chance, because I don't think plastic is just overwhelming everything. And you hear these stories about the whole microplastics and everything, like legitimately changing the genome and everything. Like, yeah, scary stuff, right? Like, we got to get away from it. Like, paper cups are good, stick with paper stuff to a certain degree, and then glass for everything else. Like, it's just more sustainable in my mind, it just makes sense. But I'm sure the chemical companies that make the plastic and stuff make a lot more money than they would off of glass and whatnot. So, random thought of the day from last week. All right, see you later, Steve. They're cracking down on lead. Oh yeah, you were having that last video, Nickel, about that lead you bought, and we do suspect. Well, there's only one lead smelter in the whole country, isn't there? Wasn't that in Texas a couple years ago where that lead smelter had an incident, an accident of some sort, and it got shut down for a while. And that's like the only place where they make lead. And there was the whole discussion about making lead bullets and stuff. Uh, yeah, lead is definitely, you got to, it's unsafe. You can't touch it. State of California says this about lead. Like, man, how did anybody before we knew that lead was dangerous survive? Maybe we just didn't try to eat it or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, keeping store glass containers is great, Nickel. I mean, obviously, I do that. Maybe not for the reasons I've discussed here, maybe for alternate reasons, but um, being able to recycle them and make your own, or have a local source to where you can go and get containers for more production of other things, and whatever, would be a worthy endeavor, I think. Steve is out. Lead will be the first metal to go extinct. Interesting. Um, what's the lead content of the Earth? I mean, it's one of the more populous metals. Are we really mining lead that fast? Because there's quite a bit of lead out there. What are we talking about? Fe? Is Fe lead on the periodic table? Yeah, the whole, I mean, there'll be lead somewhere. I mean, we've all got lead we have that could be recycled, but um, I don't know that we can have enough recycling efforts. So hopefully somebody goes out and captures a meteorite and brings all those metals back to Earth. Supposedly there's meteorites out there with every bit of mineralization you can think of, from lead to gold. Well, all, how we get it here and how we mine it is two different subjects, though, from knowing it's there. All right, Alicia, we'll see you later. Have a good one, Alicia. Thanks for checking in. Um, check out Alicia's latest video she did on the with the questions she had. I can't remember the name of the video, but she had two different questions from the title, and then the last question about the draft and the illegals left here at the home front. Copper makes the best bullets. Is that right? Well, it's a nice soft metal, right? That's why they use copper jacket on. Copper's a little too expensive to make the whole bullet out of. The jacket helps it deformation and stuff, or it holds together. But how does it work? Copper helps hold it all together, but if you made the whole thing of copper, it'd just be too expensive with the way prices are going. And it's one of those things, like all the metals, lead, copper, all of the metals, like they're not adjusted properly for the real value because of the suppression of and the manipulation of markets. Yeah, just about everything is copper jacketed now, or of some sort of copper, right? So like we've talked about for years, save up those pre-82 pennies. If not the value, they can always be melted down and used for something, whether you need a transmission wire or something to communicate, transmit electricity across or something. You never know what you'll need copper for. You can make copper pots. I mean, metals have a use for a reason, and that gets back to the thing about the overuse of plastics. We have things from the earth that don't require all this stuff that we know is bad for us in plastics, but yet we got away from using the minerals that are all around us for whatever reason. A lot of it has to do with the economics, I think. The economics of mining and stuff, the perceived notion that any type of mining is bad, and that's why it all happens out here in the West, I guess. Lead is cheaper. Yeah, lead is cheaper than copper right now. Oh, copper's only $1.05 if it's a solid copper bullet. Hmm. That sounds cheap. Yeah, obviously the battery industry use of metals is off the charts with the whole idea of this stored energy and how we're going to capture it from all these different places. But don't talk about uranium. There's a metal nobody wants to talk about. We can't talk about nuclear power, and pretty much negating the need for any of that mess because of perceived notion that we can't do it safely when somebody hopefully I'm sure if this happened they would be black bagged almost overnight, but somebody needs to make the micro reactor for home use, and just that would do away with all this madness of wind and solar that just takes up all these landscapes and everything. And you could just have a small reactor the size of your microwave, and there you go. You got your own power source that will last 25 years. You replace it every 25 years or something, and you're good to go. Uh, Somebody just needs to get to work on that, because we're not going to be long trying to figure out if we think solar and wind's going to take us into the future. We're drastically mistaken. It's not even feasible to build enough to power what we have, a little less what people want. People want this big electrified future and everything. Like, unless you go nuclear, you're not going to get it. It makes you wonder why we're not headed that direction. Hey, what's up? Adventurous Guide to the Galaxy has joined us. We can use water-powered cars. Water-powered cars. Now, see, there's that video of that guy that made the H2O engine and disappeared or whatever. The patent's gone, or somebody owns a patent and won't develop it. Like, every time somebody does something like that, they like get black bagged, right? You never hear from them again. There was another video recently about some guy. Oh, the cancer, the treatment for cancer. There was a video about a guy who found this peptide or whatever, and that's how they were treating cancer. And everybody's fighting him, right? I wonder why. It's like I recently found out it's like next to the military industrial complex, the next most corrupt thing is the automotive parts industry, and right under that is the pharmaceutical industry. I say the automotive parts jokingly just because of a recent struggle I had with car repair, but man, was it just ridiculously more difficult than it should be. When you would think that cars you'd think should be made more simply than they were 100 years ago, but it's just the opposite. Adventurous Guide says we found all the patents and we can just start using them. They disappearing us all anyway. Might as well try. Yeah, that's true. Might as well try. I'm not much on the engineering development side, but if you can do it, I'd buy one off of you, I guess, Adventures, if I could figure out how to mount it in my own vehicle. Barry Wood has joined us. How you doing? Good to see you. Moonshine can be fuel, right? White lightning. There's lots of things that can be used as fuel. You still got to produce it. It's not necessarily ever ending. Obviously, you have to grow. That comes from plant-based sources. So you have to grow it, produce it, refine it to get those type of fuels, which anything you can do to, alternate what you use is great. But the thing about the nuclear side is it's just overwhelmingly powerful. It's contained into a small area, and it can power anything you ask it to. There is no end really to that power source other than time, and after the period of time, it does degrade. Good to see you, Barry. There's a weed that can be used for fuel. Well, lots of plants can be used for fuel. And there's another suppressed um, area is hemp. Hemp in general. Our great grandfathers used it for many uses, and then the whole '60s happened, and everybody went against it. Even though they were making money off of it, they were making things with it. They were there was potential in it, and they yeah, hey, it's not legal anymore. Can't grow your hemp. It's a natural product. Stupid. We got manipulated. That's probably where the plastics company came in too. Plastics companies came in and said, "Yeah, ban this. We can replace this with this safe stuff called plastic." Yeah, maybe not. I mean, just look at everything that plastic has went into uh, in the last 20 to 30 years. Pretty much every bit of clothing has some sort of microplastic in it with and it has a good benefit because there is the wicking nature and keeping people dry and stuff with some of the athletic clothing and stuff. Like there's benefits to it, but it's like at what cost? You know, rayon. What's the other names that put on there for the different forms? Polyester. You know, they call it. It's not called plastic, but basically just a slight chemical composition different from your bottle of your plastic bottle, right? Biofuels used to be very popular, right? Yeah. I mean, yeah, people used to dabble in uh, kerosene, obviously the hemp side, the moonshine side as well, like white fuels. They do burn hot to the nature that made it difficult in the combustion engine, but there's other places you could put it. And don't talk about the evil coal. Coal is just the evilest thing you ever heard of, according to some people. You were on strike? You were on strike at Galaxy? I didn't know that. I haven't seen a video from you lately, though, I must admit. I think the last thing I saw from you were you're talking about Starlink, uh, X spaceships going up is the last thing I think. I mean, the last full video I saw from you was you talking about you're at the back of your truck. Were you talking about MVGs or talking about night camouflage with your buddy that morning? I can't remember. You may have been talking about MVGs, but anything, everything else was a short talking about Starlink and X or whatever. Interesting stuff. The sun is starting to go down here. Getting a little, you can see the sun is dissipated often, only off into the distance. Getting to that time of the evening. But I guess I'll wrap it up and go mosey about, complete my tasks for the evening. Hope everybody's doing well. Had a good week. Get through this end of this week. Just wanted to throw out some thoughts there on the never-ending. I don't know. I don't want to call it fear mongering because some people are putting out videos with good intent of discussing the subjects that are being talked about popularly among them, Civil War being one of them. But I just don't see it even close to being in the cards. It's just something that gets hyped up to bring people back to a baseline at the end of this election cycle. Come December, everybody be back into the kumbaya. We must unite to do whatever. We got to make more debt to send to countries so that we don't have to send our boys to fight or whatever it ends up being. And go check out Alicia's video and talk to her about the concerns about a draft, which I think would cause problems that people aren't anticipating, or maybe they keep floating that draft discussion out there so they can get the temperature of the people, because the quote unquote warrior class is fully against it for the most part. I mean, you got the old blue bloods, you know, the West Pointers and stuff that will support it, but the people that have been doing the dying for generations and the fighting are really coming out against any sort of imposed conscription, because they know how utterly mismanaged the military is now, and without leadership, without guidance, without an effective mission, or a good mission for that matter. So anyway, we'll let y'all go here. It's been almost an hour and we've rambled long enough. So we'll see y'all sometime this week, or if I don't see you on your videos, I'll see you on another one somewhere. So y'all be good, prep hard, live free.